All right, folks. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program today. You are on International Flavor, and my name is Samuel Trapp. I am recording this in advance. This is actually the 18th of October. I am recording this at a sanatorium in Russia, in a resort called Yangantau, and it's a sanatorium. And I went through that on a couple other programs, so I'm not going to do that again. And if you are interested, go back and listen to it on either my YouTube channel or go back to some of the archives of the show. I think JR is getting those set up so that people can listen to them at will as they would like to. I want to give you a little bit of ways to follow me. You can follow me. I'm also videoing this for upload to YouTube on my channel, which is at Samuel Trapp. I have noted a little bit of an issue with that because that channel, a lot of it is in Russian. Probably the majority of it is in Russian. And so most of the contact that I get in there from people is in Russian. I have maybe, I don't know, 10% of them done in English. So I think I'm going to create another channel focusing only on the English portion of it. And I'm going to call that either International Flavor or go back to my old radio program days of Question Everything. And I'd appreciate you joining that channel and liking it along. And I'd like to see that continue to grow. I did want to give a little bit of a preamble again because one of the biggest events in the history of modern history is coming up. Back in after World War II, a very large day was the Bretton Woods Conference in 1945, and when they started and were forming and working on an international world organization, and that's when they began the United Nations, the World Bank, trying to get all of these things worked out together. Most of them derived from that. Now, I've spent a lot of time, and people might be getting tired of hearing it, but it's a very large. The reason I've been kind of singularly focused on BRICS and the reasons for the war in Ukraine and the Western mistakes that have been made are because they're so important. And if you want to hear those, you can go back and listen. And I'm going to spend some more time, a little bit on that today, but a little bit more detailed because the closer we get to this, they haven't given a lot. There's not any true agenda for what they are putting out. Now the website that I have access to now that I've been granted the permission to attend as a correspondent, been granted the permission to attend and be in the media with any other media worldwide that have been admitted to Kazan. That might not be that special, I don't know, but you had to submit by a certain date several weeks ago, which I've done, and you have to be granted permission in advance and get, there's security things that go and all of that. And so I'm, plus, you all know me. A lot of you know me. I like to speak and I like to talk about these things, but I've been a radio show host and I can talk a lot, but I've never been a typical running, war correspondent or I don't know. I analyze political things, which is what I intend to do tonight. So I have applied for a couple of interviews with people, which I hope I get. I've been set up for an interview of me, which I'm going to try to record and keep it going. I'd like to get a couple of people to question me from there if there's any of our show hosts who would like to kind of focus me a little bit and do a remote video slash live stream. I've built a platform for that, and if there's somebody that's one of the other show hosts that would like to sit and question me, pretty much at any time, I'm going to have access to the full media stream at the BRICS conference, and so I'd be happy to share that with whoever else is interested in knowing some things. So if there are television stations, newspaper stations, people that would like information or just questions, to ask and answer, trust me, I'd be happy to do it. you should be hearing this. This is what my plan is for the 22nd of October, which is day one of the BRICS conference. I should certainly know quite a bit more because it's an all-day affair. I'll be there from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. But remember, I'm 10 hours ahead of you. So at noontime, I'll still be there. I believe it's 10 hours. I'm pretty certain that's how far ahead of Missouri I am. And so if anyone is interested in getting live content or knowing more about it, my contact information is at Samuel Trapp. samtrap1@gmail.com. Please feel free to send me emails. Get on my YouTube channel. I'll probably be doing shorts throughout the day. They're decking out the entire city of Kazan. I'm not there yet, but I'm following the calendar events that they are listing on the website for the media mob, which I'm going to be part of while I'm there. I'm going to do a couple of interviews. I'm trying to get one set up in Russian. As you all know, there may be some interest in discussing some of these things with me because of my past history as an arms control interpreter for the United States government years ago during the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty and the Nuclear Threshold Test Ban Treaty. And so all of those things to say that these are going to be, in my view, and I know I've been singularly focused on this, in my view, this is one of the big events of the century, and I think it's very important for us to know what it is. And one of the reasons for my discussion here today, and one of the things I want to talk about, is specifically Antony Blinken and his approach. Now, no matter how you slice it, that guy's term in office, I imagine if Kamala Harris wins, she might want to keep him, but I doubt it. It's a Biden pick. She'll probably liquidate everybody, just like Trump would, and put in people that, she can boss around and it'll suck up to her, or however you want to look at it. That's what happens when people come in and go into power. Only the top spots are done. All the intermediaries are left there to be the same corrupt a-holes that they have been for the past 30, 40 years. So very little changes. So even if Trump gets into office, unless they liquidate the top third of the government, nothing's going to change, people. And, a bit of a sidebar, I've always thought that there ought to be term limits for anyone working in the government. Get rid of them. You'd be far better off paying them a retirement after 20 years and forcing them to go do something else that cannot have any contact with the government. You'd have gotten rid of the Pelosi's, the Bidens, of all of these people that just sit there and rot. And by the way, we have the same thing in Missouri, which I'll get into in a private show that has to do with Missouri corruption. And I want to advertise that as often as I can. JR has given me the ability to put that in a kind of a midnight program, but I don't plan on doing that till around the first of the year, maybe sooner. But I do plan on digging in, naming names. I got nothing to lose, and so they've already destroyed me, and so. But I still have a fairly good outlook on life, even so. Look where I am. I have nothing to be ashamed of, and I'm proud to be here. No matter how little of a part I'm going to play in a massive world, I believe, a restructure. Now, to get to the topic of restructure today, I want to address your attention to a guy by the name of Antony Blinken. Now, you can agree or disagree with him. I disagree, but I'm willing to listen to the things that he has to say. And I looked at read, in fact, an article about him, and written by him, that came out in an international magazine this month. October 1st is the date of the magazine. And I want to discuss specifically that. I may even read from parts of it as we get there. But I mean, in the article, it's only 3 or 4 magazine pages with zero references that where you would put the references to where you got the information, where you got this is all fluff. The entire document is nothing but fluff. This is his view of what they have done. And I disagree with most of it, and I can point out why, but I'm not going to spend my time going too far into it. I'm just going to counter the standard blowhard information that is being presented to us by the Democratic side. And he's not going to be in office, and so this is his swan song at the end is part of the way I look at it. And I want to read a couple of paragraphs of it to you because I think it's important. The article is called it's in foreignaffairs.com. It's a print magazine as well, but it's called America's Strategy of Renewal: Rebuilding Leadership for a New World. Now, I want to call this particular episode of International Flavor, I want to call it, if you ignore it, maybe it doesn't exist. Because that's how the Democrats deal with things. Now, the reverse of that is true also. If they say something exists over and over and over, perhaps they can convince people that it does exist. Several examples of this in recent history we know of. One of the ones where it doesn't exist is the Hunter Biden laptop. That doesn't exist. Anything that says exists is Russian information. Again, the Russians are always guilty. They're never the good guys in a movie in America. They're always a bad mafia killer or even a non-mafia killer, just a bad Russian. That's the way we look at them. And it's BS. And they don't, just to be fair, they don't really do the same thing over here. You see movies with Americans in them. They're not killers. They're not mafia people. There are exceptions, but, like I've told you before, it's a shame what we're doing to the Russian culture because we disagree with their politics. At any rate, here's Blinken's excuse for these policies and politics he's putting out. America's Strategy of Renewal: Rebuilding Leadership for a New World. So I want to read the first paragraph and then go back and pick apart these sentences for you because it's important. Here's how he starts. A fierce competition is underway to define a new age in international affairs. Now, nowhere in this document, by the way, that's his opening salvo, his opening shot, is a fierce competition to have a new age in international affairs, of which he's been a part of for more than 4 years, but the last 4, he's been basically in charge, okay? If you can call anything that the Biden administration does being in charge of anything, because I think they've buried their head in the sands and haven't done any of the things that he claims to have done in this document. You can go out and it's published on October 1 of this year. It's the November-December 2024 issue. It is his swan song. And what is notably absent is the word BRICS anywhere. If we pretend that BRICS doesn't exist, maybe it doesn't. Maybe we can convince people that the rest of the world isn't necessarily, praising the United States like they are pumping down our throats and want us to believe. It's a different world, and you're seeing more and more of this now because of people like me taking an independent look. I'm nobody special, but people like me, and there are a lot of people who are very special and are putting out competing points of view on the internet that know things. They're doing it on Telegram. They're doing it on even TikTok. You can disagree with the platforms. There are different countries that limit different sorts of information that come about. And America is no different. We ban platforms in an effort to make commentary like mine inaccessible. I've been blocked by YouTube on several shows. People's commentary on my channel has been blocked. It's interesting there, but let's not pretend that the U.S. has a free speech free speech economy. I mean, Kamala Harris said just a couple of weeks ago, it might even been last week, that she said that people need to be stopped from saying things that she decides. I mean, it depends on who decides what is disinformation. A laptop was not disinformation, but you got morons running around claiming it's disinformation for political purposes. So political speech is what needs to be protected, even if it's a lie, even if it's not true. But you're allowed to have competing views. But soon, those are not the days. In Ukraine, they limit everything. If you go look, get you some Telegram if you haven't done it. They limit Telegram because the soldiers on the Russian army are putting out videos that are showing what's happening on the battlefield. And it's not only Telegram. There are other sources. You don't get a lot of it on YouTube. They block it. And in the West, they're still pumping down our throats that Ukraine's winning and Ukraine has a path to victory, and they do not. And Blinken is part of the people to blame for this nonsense. Let's continue reading. So his first paragraph: fierce competition underway to define a new age in international affairs. A small number of countries, principally Russia, with the partnership of Iran and North Korea, as well as China, are determined to alter the foundational principles of the international system. I won't analyze that yet. I want to give you the first paragraph. While their forms of government, ideologies, interests, and capabilities differ, these revisionist powers all want to entrench autocratic rule at home and assert spheres of influence around the world, or influence abroad. Why am I putting up my own words? They all wish to resolve territorial disputes by coercion or force and weaponize other countries' economic and energy dependence. They all seek to erode the foundations of the United States' strengths, its military and technological superiority, its dominant currency, its unmatched network of alliances and partnership. While these countries are not an axis, and the administration has been clear that it does not seek bloc confrontation, choices these revisionist powers are making mean we need to act decisively to prevent that outcome. Okay, now that is his thesis statement, the beginning of his article. The rest of the article is allegedly supporting that. So I want to dig into each of these sentences that he puts out, like a lawyer would. I don't practice law anymore. That's a story for a different day. You ever want to hear about it, look up Samuel Trapp versus State of Missouri, U.S. Supreme Court. See if you can download my brief, which the Supreme Court didn't even read, by the way. But we have a corrupt Missouri government. We'll get into that another day. But if you want to check that out, you go right ahead. And I hate to throw that out there, but I'm going to throw it out there anytime you want. If you're a lawyer and you haven't read my story, you need to, because one day they could come after you the same way. And there are some corrupt individuals at the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel and at the Missouri Bar. They are not good people. And they're all inbred and appoint only their sycophantic people that go there. And I can back it up. And I'd be happy to do so at any time. If that means you don't want to listen to me any longer, fine, don't. Not my problem. But I do want this to grow. And we're going to, my channel, and we are going to talk about those issues. But if you want to get a prequel, go have a read of either the Eighth Circuit brief that I wrote or the United States Supreme Court brief that I wrote. Nobody even read. Go out and have a look at it. At any rate, this first paragraph, first sentence: a small number of countries, principally Russia, with the partnership of Iran, North Korea, as well as China. Okay, this is not the truth. This is where BRICS doesn't exist, and therefore we point out a few bad operators that are trying to change the international spheres of influence from the U.S. and a small number of Western countries. And we ignore BRICS, which, by the way, BRICS has 5 core members. I believe they're at 9 or 12 approved members, and another 11 or 12 that are slated to go. But 24 world leaders are going to be at Kazan so far, and there's still the final amount has not come out yet. And so that's important too. So they want to tell you that this is just a small group of people. But remember, and I've said this before, fully 37% of the world's economic power is represented by BRICS, more than Western, by the way, and and almost 40% of the world's population, more than NATO and its allies in the US, are addressed through BRICS and not through the Western alliances of the European community and NATO. So, but the United Nations, that's a different animal. And like I've gone through many times, there are people that are seriously upset with the way decisions are handled and the blatant methods of dealing with those problems, depending on who you are and who you back, and depending on what they like to call democracy. Western democracy ceased being real democracy a long time ago, and if you don't realize that, you got problems yourself. Have a look at the United States as an example. You're telling me that the rubber stamp of the same jackoffs every 4 years is democracy? It isn't. It was bought out years and years ago by the military-industrial complex, and it's going to remain that way. And I'm not as optimistic as a lot of Trump supporters are, although I'm almost there in saying that this is a done deal and that Trump is going to win. I hope he wins. Truly do. Never been the hugest of supporters, but he's certainly the best choice that we have. But the first sentence that this guy puts in his article is that it's Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia. No, it's not. Throw in Brazil, South Africa, notably India, and several others. Just this past week, Viktor Orban is being beaten up by Ursula von der Leyen at the conference that Zelensky was putting out his victory plan, if you want to call it that. That's a serious joke, and there's nobody that has supported that so far. In fact, they told him the opposite. It's probably not something we can support. But it is the West that has driven these things by its unequal opportunity. If you're Israel, and I'm not anti-Israel, not remotely. I'm not pro-Lebanon, not remotely. I'm not pro-Gaza and Hamas or any of those things, not remotely. But the system of supposed international justice isn't very justiciable. It's just not. Because always Israel can just ignore what they want. They've been sanctioned, and I don't mean sanctioned economically. They've been sanctioned by more times than any other country in the United Nations, and they just ignore. And the U.S. won't let anybody punish them. We just veto it. Your personal thoughts, my personal thoughts on that aside, it's not exactly fair to the rest of the world, and that's part of the reason we have a problem. And Blinken is towing a line because even in this document, he tries to throw support behind Lebanon and behind, every country over there that is suddenly in the mix against Israel. He's trying to throw his support to not say that he doesn't support them, but he can't come out and say he doesn't support Israel because that's a death wish in America. So first of all, his first comments are not accurate. Then we get into the next sentence. While their form of government's ideologies, interests, and capabilities differ, these revisionist powers, the revision he's talking about is BRICS, and he says they want to entrench autocratic rule at home and assert spheres of influence abroad. Who are we to tell them they can't be autocratic at home? It has nothing to do with us. Now, I'm not saying they do or don't. I doubt that. I mean, Russia is pretty free to me. You know, there's things that you can't do. You need to know your territory. But if you go to Qatar, which is very Western, and I use that because I spent some good amount of time there, it's different traffic rules. You better learn the lay of the land where you go. There have been people who go to Mexico, can't come back. They get arrested for things while they're there that they don't think that whatever her name, Griner, the basketball player, she came over here, thought that she could get away with weed even in a puffer. They look at things differently over here. You should know where you're going and look into it before you go. And by the way, even then, you might not fully prepare for what you're doing. So I disagree with the fact that they want to entrench autocratic rule at home. That depends on the country, especially if you're looking at more BRICS countries, and assert spheres of influence abroad. Yes, they want to assert spheres of influence abroad. They're tired of being told what to do, and it's not just these four. It's everybody, their influence around the world. They wish to resolve territorial disputes by coercion or force. No, they wish to use the UN, but the UN ignores them. Russia has been complaining, and the regions that wanted to separate from Ukraine, the people that disagreed with the revolution that took out the last leader of Ukraine in 2013, 2012, whatever it was, when they started trying to force Donbass Donbass was supposed to be somewhat independent, somewhat like Transnistria on the other side in between Ukraine and Moldova. That is a unrecognized independent state that is backed by Russia. They claim to be a part of Russia. Not attached to Russia, but a different part. And there was supposed to be something different. The Minsk Accords, which are just a joke, and they actually thought of as a joke, were only put into place by the admission of the NATO people that signed it. They were only put into place to give Ukraine time to get their army big enough and get the defenses big enough to perhaps hold off Russia longer than it has. And so I'm not saying it's right, wrong, and different. I'm saying those are facts. And you never hear those facts in the West because all we do is dissolve them. And they definitely dissolve them in Anthony Blinken's letter here. All seek to erode the foundations of the United States' strength, its military and technological superiority. I'm not sure we're militarily and technologically superior anymore. Its dominant currency, they're definitely fighting that. They just adjusted the bloc's annual gross product for 2024 up to 4 point something percent, 4.6, 4.7. And countries are unloading U.S. debt. China, Japan, pick them. Anybody that has U.S. debt is unloading it because people are. The U.S. may outlive this. I could be completely wrong. I'm not saying I'd be pleasantly surprised because the fact is, if they don't do something about the way that the UN and the decision-making bodies, G7, the G20, and the Group of Five that make decisions in those organizations, BRICS will be the next, the one that everyone is trying to get into. There are so many countries trying to get in that have filed and have been invited. Turkey, now get this, these are NATO members, Turkey, Hungary, and just very recently, there's been talk that Austria might be making a play to join BRICS. And if you haven't seen the video of that, you should check that out. When Austria chewed out Ursula von der Leyen, basically saying, when are you going to level sanctions and go after Israel the way you're doing Russia? It doesn't make any sense. They're both guilty, allegedly, of the exact same offense. But nope, they ignore the one and defend the other because it's important to them who you're backing. Although you could argue that Israel is no more democratic than Ukraine. That's not. I mean, they have a generally free and fair election, is what everybody says, but it's also they don't pay any attention to the international. They're very nationalistic. There's huge nationalistic movements going on. I don't know if you saw it, but Poland is trying to do the same thing that Orban did in Hungary, and that a couple other countries are looking into as well. They completely eliminated any migration into their country, and it was an interesting read, an interesting article, that they don't have any migration. People are not allowed to migrate there. And so they're blocked at the border. And they don't just get to come and live and stay for free. One of the biggest problems in Europe. And they say they're very nationalistic. The people in Poland and the people in Hungary and the leaders that represent them have all said, listen, we honor our heritage, we honor our culture, we honor our background, where we came from, religiously, economically, nationally. And if you want to call that nationalistic, I say move along. You worry about your own country and let us run ours. That is what the rest of the world is wanting to do. And BRICS is allowing them to do that. So they're resolving territorial disputes by coercion and force? No. They want people to pay attention to them when they bring complaints about areas of Ukraine that want to secede and have a referendum. I'm not going to answer that, but when that comes along, and yeah, I'm going to answer it real quick. Здравствуйте. Да. О, что нужно? Я работаю сейчас. О, есть документы мои. О, это там внизу. Окей. Пока. No. Well, I'm very sorry for that. Messing up my show right in the middle of it. And I hope that doesn't mean that I took a whole 2 minutes there. I'm really sorry about that. But I didn't. It was actually a somewhat important call. I'm glad I took it. But at any rate, this article, which you should read, starts at that point. But as you go through this article, there are several points. He says, for example, there's a big paragraph says, we're back in the game. Like we were out of the game somehow. He said that now people are starting to pay their percentage, their fair share into NATO. Well, who started that? That wasn't the Biden administration. That was Trump. Now, he hasn't put any... Blinken hasn't put any reference points of where you can go read this, but we've heard the arguments about being back in the game. They say they're back in the game and that they're forcing people to pay their fair share in NATO. It was Trump that started that trend. Maybe it's still sitting around there, but Trump started that. He's talking about, so basically there are two reasons they're back in the game. The first one is investment at home. The second one is greater friendships abroad. Both of which propositions are truly not the case. He talks about the CHIPS initiative and bringing back science and inflation reduction and bringing things here for people to make batteries and put money into science and semiconductor. Claims to that movement is going to create 100 jobs, and they put $300 billion into it. Okay, so the U.S. is now it has gaining investment dollars from other places. So that's leg one. And the second one is there are partners all over that are partnering with them for peace. Well, that's an argument to be had because arguably the Biden administration has made the world worse and less safe. So here's another proposition that he doesn't back up with real data. He only gives platitudes like, "Oh, geez, we're doing such a good job." And basically, that's what he's saying. We're doing a good job. Here's a particular example of what he said. They realize the full potential of creating new partnerships in 4 ways. We recommitted the country's core alliances and partnerships with NATO, pledging to attack on one as against the other. They had a commitment to Japan, South Korea, and other allies in Asia, restored the G7 to its role as the steering committee of the world's advanced democracies. I don't see that. I think it's worse off now. Second, they infused the alliances with new purpose. They have created a few things in Southeast Asia with some of the initiatives to work together. U.S.-EU Trade and Technology Council was created. U.S.-India Strategic Partnership. There are some things that, they created a program, but the success of them is subject to question. Third, they put the U.S. and its ally partners together to improve their GDP, although I don't know that I agree with that paragraph either. And then fourth, they built new coalitions to address challenges. Who's heard of any new coalitions that have been put into place by the Biden administration? It's just more of the same. Everywhere you go is, you should be putting sanctions against Russia. We're really mad that you're not putting sanctions against Russia. Please put sanctions against China and Russia, and don't do that. Don't let them get away with this because we disagree with their form of government. And other people are reacting differently to the exact same world circumstances. And our way is always by force. Monetary policy or military power. Those are the things that we put out. Creating partnerships, you've only created partnerships with people you already have partnerships with. So basically, you create another bureaucratic boondoggle to create some more things and throw some more money at, which goes right back into the circle of the military-industrial complex. This next section is called Reacting to Revisionism. Reacting to revisionism. This is where, without mentioning BRICS, remember, if we don't mention it, it doesn't exist. And then they say it doesn't have a headquarters. It's not true. It's in Shanghai. Beijing. I'm sorry. It's in Beijing. But they have revisionism that we attack. We attacked on Ukraine, on the principles of democracy. Here you go. Because it was an attack not just on, they're talking about Russia specific here, because it was an attack not just on Ukraine, but also on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. At the heart of the UN Charter, Putin's war, again, let's get political, has stoked fears beyond Europe. Well, why? And nobody ever answers that question. I encourage him to try to answer it. Nobody, I personally do not believe, nor is there any basis to believe, whether expert opinion or not, that Russia has intentions to take over Europe. This is a limited operation. It's called a special military operation. You can argue about the success and the merits and whether they've succeeded, but they're fighting against the United States, and there's no doubt about it. They're fighting the United States. Arguably, they're fighting against the Bidens specifically because the Bidens put their son in an organization called Burisma, and when the prosecutor of Ukraine in 2014 was looking to file corruption charges against a prosecutor who, was looking to file charges against Burisma and perhaps Biden's connection as well, Biden went over there and said, "You're not getting these billions of dollars that we've promised you unless you get rid of the prosecutor," and prosecutor's gone the next day. So that is how the U.S. deals with conflict. If you don't like it, if you're hiding something, that's how it works. The more dependent Russia became on support from the rest of these countries, the more the revisionists expected and got in return. Putin agreed to share Russia's advanced weapon technology with North Korea. Well, you can talk this specifically about India. India makes no bones about it, as I've already mentioned, that they want to do trade on their own terms with who they want. This is the reason for the growth of BRICS. And they've been begging for changes to the UN structure for years, at least 10 to 20. And we've not done it. We just kind of, like we always do, that problem doesn't exist, and so we ignore it. And we say the problem doesn't exist, and therefore the problem doesn't exist. Well, what you've done, and then with this sanction strategy where you get to pick winners and losers, which happens everywhere in the United States, they being the deep state actors who fund all of the people who get picked to be secretaries of state, judges, whatever organization or agency you wish to run. Those are all from people who have to kiss the ass of the military industrial complex and the power that is behind them, which is people that have also been appointed by the military industrial complex in order to get appointed and get their share of the money that gets to, slide through the processes. I'd like to believe that it's not corrupt, but I do not. And I don't believe that anybody else does either. And part of it is because nobody has revamped that system in years. They're afraid of Trump specifically for this. We'll make sure that all the other hosts talk about that. I'm going to try to keep this real. So the Great Convergence is his next topic. Arguably the most consequential shift we have achieved has not been within regions but across them. When he launched his invasion, Putin thought he could use Europe's reliance on Russian gas, oil, and coal to sow division and weaken its support. This is where he claims that sanctions are working. Sanctions are not working. I'm here in Russia and they are booming. There's new stuff everywhere. People are making good money. They have a severe shortage of people to work. They are very seriously outpacing us. And they do have the social networks that, a lot of more liberal governments have. They take care of their pensioners. They take, not to a limited extent, you could always argue about how much they receive. They take care of families coming in. Did you know that when you have a baby a woman who has a baby in Russia, the family gets an 8 million ruble, 800,000 payment, about 8,000, which goes a long freaking way. And the next child you have, it goes up. And so I won't go too deep into what Russia's doing in specifics, but you never hear anything about that. Now they've signed, and he goes to great lengths to say, well, even if Russia pulls this off for now, we've all signed, everybody has signed, and however many countries it is, I don't remember, but it's 7 or 8 at least, if not quite a bit more, that have signed 10-year security deals with Ukraine to provide them money, including the United States. We are still funding that rat hole and arguably are going to continue to do it for the next 10 years because the military-industrial complex has to get its payday. So that's how that's going to work. So let's see. Here's the laughable part. That the U.S. is making a stronger offer. This is a subheading. U.S. making a stronger offer. And I'll read the first paragraph of that. For many developing and emerging market economies or countries, great power competition in the past meant being told to pick a side in a contest that felt far removed from their daily struggles. It sounds like he's talking about Warsaw Pact versus NATO. Many have expressed concern that today's rivalry is really no different. Truly, it's not. We created an enemy so that it wouldn't be any different. So you can force people to take one side or the other. They have to pick a side. And a lot of the nationalist countries don't want to pick a side. They want to have the ability to stay out of it completely. But you can't do that if you need to back American democracy, because the only way you can do that, or America's form of democracy, the only way you can do that is input your sanctions against Russia, which is why India and several other countries are having a bit of a problem with that. You're not allowed to buy oil, but you can slide it through Ukraine and still provide oil and natural gas to European countries. Russia is providing gas products through a pipeline across Ukraine. Now, there's talk that they're going to cancel it because Orban is the one buying all the Russian gas. And they want to force Orban to do something. And that would require stopping the pipeline. And so there may be some efforts to get that done as well. At any rate, when he comes up and says on the end, I'll read you his paragraph, because this applies to a lot of us that listen to this show and this channel, this radio station. Although some Americans favor greater unilateralism and isolationism, he skipped the word nationalism. Take care of your own first. He skipped. There is, in fact, broad support for the pillars of the Biden administration strategy, which is put money at home and develop your friendships abroad, neither one of which I believe have occurred. The CHIPS and Science Act and multiple rounds of funding for Ukraine and Taiwan passed in Congress with bipartisan support. Well, that's because they're all backed by the military-industrial complex. In order to get reelected, they got to keep the money train running. And that's what they do. The government gives all the money, and the powers that be siphon off their fair share while that process is in the works. So, at any rate, Democrats and Republicans in both houses are committed to strengthening U.S. alliances. In poll after poll, this I disagree with. You see what you think of it. In poll after poll, most Americans see principled and disciplined U.S. leadership in the world as vital. I would take out the words "in the world." A lot of Americans don't give a shit what's going on. Sorry about that. Don't give a shit what's going on in Ukraine. Don't give a shit what's going on in other countries. They want to take care of us at home. That's what people are pissed off about. That's what this election is about. You want to say that there aren't nationalist tendencies? I got news for you. There are. Ukraine, they have to enforce DEI in order to keep getting money from the United States government. So they're doing the same thing. They're having gay pride parades. Their people aren't for that. Their religion isn't for that. And we're doing the same everywhere. You force these crazy liberal tendencies on people. And you can call me a bigot. You can call me against gays all you want. I'm not. I've had some friends that are gay. I admit there's probably people that are my friends that I didn't know were gay. I suppose that's possible. It looks like I got to turn on a light or two in here. But I'll keep talking while I'm doing it. But in order to get and keep the money train running from the U.S. government, from NATO, you've still got to grease the wheels, as it were. And so that is the basics of his article. Now, I want to read you, and this one might take a little bit longer, but it's very interesting to me. I hope it is to you. There's a guy who reviewed the article, and that person, hang on, I got to get to my Yandex correctly and see where I have stored that article. And that person has, where is he? I got to find this, this article. Come on. Is it this one? Nope. There's so many articles that I've reviewed. I apologize that it isn't just coming up, and my internet is working a little bit slower than I would like it to in order to pull that document up. But this article came out just very recently, the one written in Russian that I'm talking about, and that is what I'm looking for. And so I'm going to look into the Blinken article. I suppose I'll have to search it one more time. and get the reaction to the Blinken article, which was in Komsomolskaya Pravda. A Komsomol is a young activist communist way back in the day, and that is. I wonder if I can pause this thing and restart it. Okay, well, sorry, I should learn how to push pause before that because I have the document right in front of me, and this one is in Russian, so I can't, if I do the Google Translate, well, I'm actually on Yandex, but if I did it on Google Translate, it wouldn't be accurate anyway because this is a very detailed document. So I'll tell you what it says, and I don't plan to read the whole thing to you anyway. But here's the title. Into the BRICS. BRICS has been drawn, has drawn into itself even some members of NATO and some people who are looking to be part of the European community. The West remains, for the West, it remains only to continue lying and slinging mud is probably the best translation for that. In the American political tradition, if you if you say that something doesn't exist, then if you don't like something, you can just pretend that it doesn't exist, is what they're saying. Just as if they don't exist at all, the leaders in these topics don't issue at all. The leaders in Washington just ignore it, and that's it. From the start of the international BRICS conferences, when it was just BRICS, BRIC, which there was South Africa was the last one to come in, and then BRICS Plus, the same thing has occurred. What BRICS? We don't know anything about BRICS. At any rate, we don't say that aloud. Now, don't tell me that Anthony Blinken doesn't know anything about BRICS, but trust me, he didn't say anything about it. He didn't say anything about it on purpose, because if people were like me and knew quite a bit more about it, then they would be frightened for the future of the U.S. form of government. Now, I say that opportunity exists, but that's because I'm a fairly positive person. If typical people look at this, they say, "Whoa, geez, that could destroy us," and they go bury their heads in the sand and pretend that it doesn't exist, just like Blinken. But make no doubt about it, if they don't dramatically reform the way the world is run and get rid of the Obama sort of New World Order, they're creating their own New World Order. Several weeks ago, I read to you the agenda and the other meetings that are taking place all over the place this year regarding BRICS. They have their own World Health Organization. I forget the name of it. They have their own banking structure for exchange of money. There's some very serious topics. I believe the most important topics here will be what a country has to do to be apply for BRICS, what they have to commit to, and that will include no more sanctions, and it will be something that is far more democratic than the process we have right now. I don't believe, even though Russia is the ones hosting it this year, last year or 2 years ago, it was China that hosted this conference. This one is very serious. They're no longer just 5 countries working together. There have been reports there have been 80 to 100 countries that want to join, that want to change the way that people think. I intend to read you a couple of these stories. At the beginning of this, and then he outlines that to rebrand leadership in the New World, Blinken doesn't mention a word about BRICS. He goes back to the old, we've done a few things differently, and here's where we are. They completely ignored the Global South. They haven't talked about them at all. they want to instead, and Blinken's article did this, said that Russia has threatened a bunch of the countries from Africa. What has happened is they've been invited in after these countries have booted out the U.S. because they don't want to have the U.S. dictating to them how their country shall be run. Whether you agree or disagree, the Russians stated, and the Indians, and the Chinese, and South Africa, and Brazil, all of them have basically a hands-off policy as far as dealing with what happens in other countries. They are looking for mutual profitable scenarios. Anybody that knows any Chinese people would know this to be true. Most Americans are looking for mutually profitable agreements. There's an argument to be made that maybe the U.S. should be encouraging a complete rebuild. I mean, what about getting rid of an overstuffed, bloated, corrupt organization where the leaders are appointed by leaders who are leaving or big money people, and hope that it comes out a little different in the rebuild? Try to protect and build something into the structure like they allegedly did with the UN. Now, people have been screaming, like I said, for a new group of changes that allow people to do something differently in the UN for years. And so far, that hasn't happened. Now, India has allegedly been given more power in the seats at the table, but nobody in the EC thinks that the veto power, which resides with 5 countries, is fair anymore. Now, there's arguments to be made on both sides of that, and I don't claim to be God's gift to resolving that dispute. But if you can start with a new organization, what's wrong with finding out what it is at the ground floor and hoping to get your part of it? Because the U.S. is still, now I don't think that it's going to be forever, but there's going to be the Chinese economy is outpacing U.S. right now. The U.S., the annual gross product is, I want to say 1.7% for this year, where it's 4.5 in most BRICS countries. They are an alliance where they deal with themselves. They're an alliance where they trade with each other. If they come up with a leadership structure, which arguably they already have done, Vladimir Putin is this year's president. Who knows what it'll be? I assume, I haven't read anything about it, but I assume the votes will be in. I don't know how long he will be the president of the organization. I think they do these at least every 2 years, but I think it's every single year. And so they will then appoint, it could be at this conference that they appoint another president, another country to host all of these events. And like I said, they're building counterparts to all UN structures because people have asked for 10 years for these things to be done. And if the U.S. holds fast to controlling it all, holds fast to sanctions, and doesn't fix its own internal problems, debt-wise especially, those of you who may not know it, Russia's gross national debt is about 500 billion. Now, that's a lot of money, but it's far less than any sort of percent of their economy. And don't quote me on that. Those numbers are probably outdated, but the percentage of their debt to their gross domestic product is less than 5%. Ours is, last numbers I saw were close to, if not over 100%. And so who's fooling who here? The fact is that all of these countries unloading U.S. security and U.S. debt, including Japan, one of our strongest allies, they're dumping U.S. treasuries. Why? We have too much debt, and BRICS is looking more and more strength organized, and BRICS has taken over as the lead economy group in the world. And China individually is doing the same. I've repeated that topic several times. Okay, well, that's the analysis of this guy's article, and I'm gonna read you the last part. Well, translate it while reading it. I'm gonna tell you what it is. BRICS. It is not uh, whoever is. It's not a game. Basically, he's saying one side for red and the other for white. It is an serious threat to the West. It's interesting in that all by itself, in difficult conditions, they want to create and honor legal structures without a head, without a head, without chief conditions that'll make them all grow is basically how it is. You know, if you're going to put it apart and read it, and it's kind of hard to do because in written form they do it a little bit different. I probably should have translated into English first and then done it, because then I could have just read it. But this group that is the group of people that have long been looking for admittance into NATO are now looking into the BRICS sphere. And so I think the Russians see it completely differently. And so does the rest of the world, by the way. This is not an individual article after Blinken's. It's an individual from the Russian side. But basically, they're making fun of him, too. In this article, they're going, Jesus, this guy just pretends it doesn't exist. You know, I've said that all the time. And if, you know, the converse is also true, like I said, if you claim that something does exist, like, you know, hey, man, if we say long enough that there are 20 genders, people will believe it. Well, I don't, but, and I think a lot of more or less philosophically neutral people are coming to that conclusion. Do whatever you want to do in the privacy of your own home. I don't care. Excuse me, but I don't care. Do what you want, but leave me out of it. Don't tell me I got to support you more than I support someone else. I also wanted to read, okay, I have a lot of news that's happened in the last 2-3 days that is coming out. So I want to pull up some of it, and read it to you. Some of it will be for translation, just like that one. But in case you missed it, I'd like you to see some of these things, because it is kind of crazy where we are. And so one of the first ones has to do with Zelensky and his victory plan. Basically, he's threatened the world, and NATO specifically, to say either give us nuclear weapons or allow us to be a part of NATO. Now, everything that I've read so far, even on the American side and some German sides, you have to translate them with your Google. Der Bild and Das Bild, I don't remember, but there's several sources that I go out and read. That Brussels, there's where they head most of the United Nations security issues. That's where the headquarters is, and these people listened to Zelensky, but then kind of laughed up their sleeves about it and said, well, you know, it's okay for him to want that. Biden's allegedly going there this weekend again, canceled last week, didn't go to the meeting for this week. Listen to the alleged victory plan, and they're going to do what they want. Trump this week came out with something that said, basically, and Vance has been very clear where he is, and I think they're going to win. The way to end this war, according to a lot of foreign journalism in Europe especially, is quit funding it and it'll dry up within 15 days. Someone said that just very recently. And Zelensky's plan, if you go out to Telegram, here's what I encourage you to do. Go out to Telegram and look for, they might translate them automatically for you. I read them in Russian, but ask for ones that show you what's going on with Ukrainian mobilization. Women are trying to defend their men. I watched one today where they were trying to turn a car over. that was in the area of Odessa. They, attacking these guys that are coming to round up people to go to the front. And they don't go themselves. It's better to become one of these people because people pay you off to get you out of the out of harm's way, get you out of having the ability or having forced to go into war. And there's a ton of them out there. You can see them everywhere. Basically, if you look at the Walter Baer, who's an Australian politician, he said, basically, when, like I was telling you before, I'll give you his words. When are you going to level sanctions against Israel? His parents were, according to what he said in this meeting, said that his parents survived Auschwitz, I believe it was, that they survived a concentration camp, his own parents, and he's from Austria. And he said, watching what's going on, how come you're not leveling sanctions, Ursula von der Leyen, how come you're not leveling sanctions against Israel? You need to be. He said that the world has to stop allowing their word, Nazis, because they're victims of the Holocaust. Just because they're victims of the Holocaust doesn't mean that Israel gets to conduct genocide on another place. And he's not alone. There are plenty of people taking his side. And so let's see. The next one was also pretty interesting. Here's another person, not me, but listen to somebody else who put this out. In Russia, they have everything. Here is a high level of life. I came to Moscow and I saw a quality, wonderful cars that are both Chinese and Russian. I saw a very developed country. No, I say the same thing. Поэтому, I'm starting to read in Russian. As a result, please don't believe all the foolishness that people are trying to pump down your throat. And this is a deputy minister from Slovakia. Her name is Luboš Blaga. And she's located in Moscow and saying, start spreading up all the good things that are going on about Russia. My idea was a Russian-American friendship league. There's really no reason that Russia shouldn't be, if not our partner, if not our friend, at least not our enemy. And this is long overdue and needs to be taken care of. Here's something on the plan of victory for Zelensky. The plan of victory of Zelensky's victory plan is now a plan of capitulation. Ukraine and the West have lost this war. If Joe Biden and Boris Johnson hadn't interfered with a peaceful process between Ukraine and Russia in 2022, more than 1 million Ukrainians would still be alive. Remember this when you vote next month, is what she says. This is or he says. This, I believe it is a he, a German businessman, Kim.com, about the plan of victory of Zelensky. Here's another one for you. This was interesting. This was put out by a priest, okay? Not that they're not all interesting. I find them. This is a priest who says, when a doctor takes on trying to heal a person, it could mean, and he ends up killing them, it could be a death or loss of blood, but we understand that this doctor, and in this case, the surgery is the special military operation. This is an act of a doctor trying to cure a human being. And so you can't blame the people who are fighting the war for what's going on there, because this, you could take the point of view that it is put into place to cure a person. You can't cure Nazism without going forward here. And there's plenty of Nazism. Research that on your own. I don't like it so much I don't even want to talk about it, but it definitely exists all over the place in Ukraine. Look up the stories, look up something on SS uniforms. People were thrown out of training in Europe because their unit insignia was the SS symbol or a swastika. A lot of them are tattooed that way, and they're Nazis, and they're very proud of it. And certain areas of Ukraine are very much so. Certain supported by the United States units, subunits, companies, battalions are Nazi battalions. That is the absolute truth. And so perhaps you should understand that and read, and when you hear things about things that are going on in Ukraine. Here's one specific on BRICS, okay? And this is just a commentary. This is about Serbia. If BRICS is okay for other countries, just as it was for the Organization of UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia and Turkey, which all are very much interested and have filled out their paperwork, then why is it any different for a country of Serbia? There is no doubt that BRICS has become a real alternative to the EC. Serbia can, this is a statement, Serbia might be able to enter BRICS instead of the EC. The country is looking over this possibility even now. This was said by a Vice Premier, Alexander Bulin. He said as well that Serbia is required to look at the summit going on in Kazan. I think they've been invited. I'm not sure they're coming yet. But Serbia, which is a NATO country, or, well, trying to be, if they aren't already, and a member or an attempted member of the European Economic Community. They're saying, why wouldn't we want to consider what's going on in BRICS? There's another one, and an obvious one. Cuba is doing the same. Mexico is going to be there. There's going to be South American countries there. I believe Colombia has been invited. Let's see. Next one. This is their interpretation of J.D. Vance. And you could probably read this in English somewhere, and I might butcher it a little bit, having it gone from interpretation from Vance to Russian and now back, but it's important what he said in here. I see that there has risen a pathologic unhappiness about children in the American society. Do you know what people say? Why would we want to have children because of a bad, what with the climate being so bad and all? I would use the word sociopath for such people. I think that it's a crazy idea, an idea that has to the idea of not building a family because of some sort of climate control. He thinks that that's a bad. Our country is having a net negative growth rate because of family births, especially on the side of what so-called, you want to call them traditional Americans, white people that have lived there forever. Their families have been there, like mine, for several generations on both sides. My mother's side came from Germany, and my father's side came from Austria, and both of them in the neighborhood of 100 to 150 years ago is when they came here. And now they're saying that children aren't being considered because of climate change. I think it's because people are afraid to raise them in a country that is so crazy DEI, and they can't even have a military commercial without talking about inclusion. And your person that's talking about your joining the army is somebody who had two mothers. It's okay. Well, why must we focus all the time on the outliers and not on the standard person? I'm not saying you shouldn't every once in a while throw a bone to the outliers. Fine, they should have every opportunity that everyone else has, and I have no problem with that. Okay, this one was near and dear to my heart, and because think about the treaties on the limitation of nuclear weapons, which the Soviet Union and the United States were able to ratify at the most difficult moments of the Cold War, with great ideological conflict and ideological differences. Nevertheless, rational people and powers were able to sit at a negotiation table and make progress and create these treaties. But at this minute, at that time, a large role was played by scientists and independent physicists who all said, basically, that, look, we really got to do something about this. No matter what happens, nuclear war, nobody wants it. Then at the end, they say, for now, scientists of Russia and Ukraine are also friends. And I think that maybe they need to start doing the same now. Like scientists and people that are afraid of nuclear war. We say nuclear war like it's a freaking joke. We say nuclear war like we're waiting for Putin to throw some nuclear bombs somebody's way. Or we'll throw them ourselves and claim it was the Russians or the Chinese, or Iran. And so it's, false flag operations do exist, my dear friends. And that's what they are claiming, that normal people don't have these discussions about nuclear bombs and throw it off as if it's just a small matter. And then when Putin says something about their policy, you immediately say, oh, he wants to throw a nuclear bomb. That is not what he said. I challenge anybody to interpret that and call me on it. That's not what he said. And he said, we have power. We don't do first strike. They've said that they could if, for example, they changed their posture literally within the last month or so, that the posture now is not, we won't fire first, we will only fire defensively, to saying that, and this was specifically about Ukraine being backed by the United States, and specifically to stop long-range weapons from being able to target deep inside Russia. They said, if non-nuclear power, with the support, guidance, intelligence of a nuclear power, bombs our territories, we then reserve the right to take action against the nuclear power or the person using nuclear up to and including nuclear methods. I think that's an important distinction. This is what they've changed, but they still have a basic threat policy that we won't go first. But they're addressing the fact that the U.S. and the West are trying to goad them into nuclear war. And, whether you're a conspiracy theorist or not, there's questions to be had about aliens. There's questions to be had about the Kennedy murders. There's questions to be had about a great number of things that have occurred. Why would it be any different if someone, for example, who blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Where's the conspiracy theory on that? Russia is basically saying, look, we're keeping all options on the table. Nobody said, we're going to bomb you next week. Nobody said that. It was basically look, you're claiming that you're going to give them the ability to bomb deep inside of our territory. You better think twice about that, because we may take action against your country. if you do. A lot of people say that nothing has ever happened on U.S. soil, and rightly so, because nothing, civil wars have, and hundreds of years ago they have, but no modern war has ever taken place on the United States. If it's coming, it'll probably come from our own government, trying to silence speech, silence weapons. It's a different world than it was it was still in my lifetime, even 30 years ago. Totally different world. And we all need to understand that and plan accordingly. What else did we have? This is Wall Street Journal. Biden and other Western leaders have said on more than one occasion that they want victory for Ukraine, but they aren't given enough support in order to stop Russia and fix the situation. This is what Ukrainian units are saying right now. That's what they're saying. And those reports are coming from the Wall Street Journal, who has their own independent people out there looking at it. The Biden administration reacted poorly to the Zelensky peace plan and on the request to allow Ukraine to use weapons, Western weapons. This is according to Wall Street Journal. It says that they are not getting that possibility. That's fairly new. We really don't know. Allegedly, Biden is going to be in charge of that. He hasn't given that answer, but it's not like anybody has very positively looked on his victory plan and said, either nuclear weapons or NATO are going to happen. Neither one is, according to everything that I've read and every expert that I've listened to that matters. I want to find, there's one crazy dude that I talked to you about last week, and I'll find him, and we will end on that note if I can. And hopefully when I bring up his video, we'll be able to hear it, because I am going to play it for you. And but I have to get to that video. I'm going to pause for a second and find it. Okay, I have found it. Listen to what this guy says. Okay.
Important connection between Russian empire and the way the United States has thought about the Russo-Ukrainian war. From the very beginning, we have tended to treat Russia as a real country because we're aware of its big history, big literature, big past. Many of us learned about it in school. And many of us imbibed the Russian imperial narrative, according to which the peoples that we've been speaking about today were secondary, irrelevant, troublemakers, nationalists, to somehow be dismissed. And I think that was deep under our skin and had a lot to do with the misjudgments that Americans made in general in February 2022, when we took for granted as a society and as a polity that Ukraine would break within a few days when Russia invaded. And I think we are still in a process of de-imperializing or decolonizing our own minds vis-a-vis Ukraine. I think we have seriously underestimated the potential of the Ukrainian armed forces and the potential of Ukrainian society, partly because we have taken in imperial assumptions ourselves. And it seems to me that that should be a part of what we're talking about today. So part of being an empire is controlling the discourse. And to a large degree, the Russians have been able to control the strategic discourse, setting up for us new rules in war, which have never existed before. Like, for example, that when you invade another country, the entire war should take place on the territory of the country you've invaded. No one has ever said that before because it's completely absurd. And yet somehow it's been accepted in the United States as normal that this war should be fought on Ukrainian territory. There is no precedence for that kind of idea. Another idea that the Russians have that we've accepted is that it's normal, for example, when you and I were in Kiev, for ballistic missiles to rain down on the city where we were trying to do normal business, but it's somehow not normal for ballistic missiles from Ukraine to go into Russia. Why is that? Why is it normal for one country and not for another? It has a great deal to do with imperial thinking.
Let's pause him for just a second there. Why is it important? Well, the guy, what a blowhard. Here he is. Who's paying him? He's at the Helsinki Commission, right? And they're talking about, as you heard, Russian colonialism, saying for hundreds of years, Russia's been colonialist. and has downtrodden these peoples. That is not the case. Ukraine was a huge part of the Soviet Union. Huge part. Lots of people come there. If you go back and watch Russian films, a lot of them were filmed at the Odessa Film Studio. They were culturally connected, religiously connected, militarily connected, and everything else Slavic connected. And this guy wants to say that didn't exist, number one, and that it was only Russian imperialism that we've ignored, and that somehow Ukraine is winning this war. This is one of the goons that thinks this is people that are giving advice to the world, to the U.S. world, saying, "Well, geez," and here he is pumping, and he's got a Yale. His name is Professor Timothy Snyder, by the way, and he's got a Yale position to back, and he's teaching this crap to other people. That, well, Russia isn't a real country. Russia's not a real country. Why not? And he's skipping the main point is, why are we saying that it could only take place on that war? The Russians have said, if you go outside of that and use American weapons, American technology, American military intelligence, American electronic warfare to wage war on the Russian soil through Ukraine, then you are making an active war on Russia. That is what he's saying. And I know this guy knows that, but he doesn't care. He don't give a rip about any of the people on the ground. He doesn't give a rip about Ukraine. He gives a rip about who's lining his pockets and the glad handing that he gets to do with people of power. I don't know the guy, but I'll bet you almost dollars to donuts that this guy who's never done anything else in life, but say, he went to Kiev. He goes to Ukraine and decides, hey, let's spread some money around. You know what he should do? He's the people probably pumping DEI and telling them to do it and, let them run their own country. We'll just give them the weapons and let them run their own country. He's ready to kill off all the Ukrainians on his own. Let's finish up with him because I got to wrap up the show.
Which we have accepted. There's something precious, special, etc. about Russia, and somehow it's okay for Ukrainians to be victims because they always have been victims. We need to investigate, I think, that understructure of thinking, which I believe has guided our policy in the wrong way. So as far as empires are concerned, I'll return to what I said at the end, trying to respond now to your question about a victory plan. I believe the Ukrainians are right about something that they're hard pressed to convince us of. And I think what I'm saying now is consistent with the history of empire. The Russians are going to negotiate peace when they believe they are losing. And so if anyone is serious about negotiation, that person should be trying to get the Russians into a position where they think they might be losing. The Ukrainians get that, but they're having a really hard time making us understand that.
Okay, that is basically the end. It goes on for another 15, 20 seconds. But that point is critical. Think about this. The victory plan can work, basically, is what he's saying. That he needs the victory. And the reason that this victory plan will work is because we need to get rid of our thought processes regarding Russian colonialism. My big question at this point was huge. Well, okay, but that's the pot calling the kettle black. Tell me about what are you doing in Kiev right now? Colonizing Ukraine on behalf of America. It's okay for us to act this way, Professor Timothy Snyder, but it's not okay for Russia to object to it. And if they object to it and come into countries that have, you can argue what you want about whether or not these referendums were free and fair, but that's why they say they're coming in. The U.S. does it. In other places, we do it all the time. Where'd Czechoslovakia go? Where'd Serbia go? I mean, Serbia's around, but what do you mean Bosnia-Herzegovina? There are issues on all of these places, and the U.S. was very much colonialistic in these. What about Iraq that they're booting us out of by the end of next year? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's show. I went through quite a bit of stuff. I got to keep it to an hour and a half. Please follow the schedule at damradio.com/schedule and follow me at samueltrapp.com, at samueltrapp on YouTube. follow me there. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter. I have a Facebook, but I don't use it very often. Thank you so much for your support. Have a very nice day, and I will see you next time.